By the time I looked at my phone, there were 79 missed calls waiting for me. Just hours earlier, my own family had smiled across the Christmas dinner table, while quietly giving away the home I'd spent 12 years sacrificing to own. They thought I'd never find out. They couldn't have been more wrong. Christmas had always been sacred in my family. No matter how busy life became, everyone returned to my parents' old house on Christmas Eve. The same handmade ornaments decorated the tree. The same cinnamon candles filled every room. The same stories were told every year, as if time itself refused to move. At least, that's how it looked from the outside. Inside our family, things had changed long ago. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 38, years old, single, and work as a senior architectural designer. 12 years earlier, after losing both my fiancé and my job within 6 months, I promised myself I'd never depend on anyone again. I worked nights, weekends, skipped vacations, ignored expensive hobbies. Every bonus, every raise, every freelance project went into one dream: owning a place that no one could ever take from me. Finally, 3 years ago, I bought a beautiful downtown condo overlooking the river. It wasn't a mansion, but it was mine. Every wall represented another sacrifice. Every room reminded me that I'd survived my worst years. Only one person truly understood what that condo meant: my grandmother, Eleanor. "The world can take almost everything," she'd once told me while standing on the balcony, "but nobody can steal the peace you've built with your own hands." She passed away the following spring. I kept her favorite rocking chair beside the living room window ever since. That Christmas would have been her 85th birthday. I planned to spend the morning at my parents' house, exchange gifts, eat dinner, and leave before the annual family argument started. Simple, predictable, safe, or so I believed. When I arrived, something felt off. My younger brother Jason hugged me far longer than usual. My sister-in-law Melissa avoided eye contact. My cousin Trevor suddenly became unusually interested in asking about my work. Even my father seemed strangely cheerful. Too cheerful. Mom kept disappearing into the kitchen every few minutes to whisper with Melissa. Each time I walked in, the conversation stopped. I noticed it, but I ignored it. Families have strange dynamics during the holidays. I didn't want drama. Dinner finally began. Turkey, ham, mashed potatoes. Grandma's stuffing recipe. For almost an hour, everything seemed normal. People laughed. Children opened presents early. Christmas music played softly in the background. Then Dad stood and tapped his wine glass. I'd like everyone's attention. The room quieted. "I have wonderful news." He smiled toward Jason. As everyone knows, Jason and Melissa have struggled since losing their apartment. Several relatives nodded sympathetically. Dad continued, "But thanks to an incredible blessing, they'll finally have a place to call home." Everyone applauded. I smiled politely, then Dad said the sentence that froze every muscle in my body. "Emily has generously agreed to let them move into her downtown condo permanently." Silence. My fork slipped from my fingers. It clattered against the plate. I stared at him. What?" Dad laughed as though I were embarrassed by the attention. "Don't be modest." Jason smiled awkwardly. Melissa actually wiped away tears. My aunt reached across the table. "Emily, you're such a blessing," another cousin added. "I always knew you had the biggest heart." I looked around the room. Every single person believed this. Every one of them, except me. I never agreed to that. The room fell silent. Dad's smile disappeared. "What are you talking about?" "I never said Jason could have my condo." Jason slowly lowered his glass. Melissa's face turned pale. Mom whispered, "Emily, please." "No," I replied, my voice shaking. "Someone explain what's happening." Dad cleared his throat. "We've already discussed it. No, you discussed it. Jason finally spoke. Dad told us you'd made your decision weeks ago. I turned toward him. He what? Jason looked genuinely confused. He said you wanted to help us start over. I never had that conversation. The silence became unbearable. Then Aunt Carol nervously laughed. This is just a misunderstanding. Dad slammed his hand on the table. Enough. His voice echoed through the dining room. You've always been selfish about that condo. Every eye shifted back to me. Selfish? I'd spent 12 years earning every dollar that paid for it. I hadn't inherited it. No one had helped me buy it. Not one mortgage payment had come from anyone else. Yet somehow, I was selfish. I paid for that home, I said quietly. I know. Dad folded his arms. But family comes first. I looked around the room searching for one person, just one, who thought this sounded insane. Nobody spoke. Nobody defended me. Grandma's empty chair sat in the corner. For the first time in years, I wished she were there. I stood, picked up my coat. I think I'm leaving. Mom hurried after me. Emily, don't make a scene. I stopped at the front door. I didn't. I looked back at everyone gathered around the table. You did. Outside, snow had started falling. The cold air burned my lungs. I drove away without any destination. For nearly 2 hours, I wandered through quiet streets decorated with Christmas lights. Eventually, I parked beside the river overlooking the city skyline. My phone had been on silent inside my purse the entire evening. When I finally unlocked it, my blood ran cold. 79 missed calls, 34 text messages, 9 voicemails. Most were from unknown numbers. Others came from Jason, Melissa, Dad, Mom, and one message from my condo building's property manager. Emily, please call me immediately. Someone is here claiming ownership of your unit. I stared at the screen. Then another call came in. Unknown number, I answered. Hello? A nervous voice said, Ms. Carter? Yes. This is Officer Daniels with the City Police Department. My heart stopped. We need you to come to your condominium building immediately. Why? There was a long pause. Then he quietly said, Someone has already started moving into your home. The steering wheel nearly slipped from my hands. I looked toward the glowing city skyline. Whatever had happened during Christmas dinner, it was far bigger than I had imagined. And I had a terrible feeling this nightmare had only just begun. Snow pelted the windshield as Emily's hands tightened around the steering wheel. The cheerful Christmas lights lining the streets now looked surreal, mocking the panic rising in her chest. Someone had already started moving into her home. The words echoed over and over. Officer Daniels had given her only one instruction. Please come as quickly as you safely can. No explanation, no reassurance, just urgency. 25 minutes later, Emily pulled into the underground parking garage of her condominium building. 2 police cruisers sat near the entrance. Her stomach dropped. The lobby doors slid open before she even reached them. The building manager, Richard, hurried toward her. His face was pale. Emily, thank goodness you're here. What happened? Richard glanced toward the elevators before lowering his voice. They arrived this afternoon with a moving truck. Emily frowned. Who? Your brother, his wife, your parents, and 6 other relatives. Emily blinked. My entire family? Richard nodded slowly. They brought furniture. She felt dizzy. They said you had gifted them the condo as a Christmas surprise. Emily's heartbeat thundered. Richard continued. They had paperwork. Paperwork? Copies of what looked like a transfer agreement. Emily's eyes widened. I never signed anything. I know that now. Officer Daniels approached. You must be Ms. Carter. Yes. I'm sorry you're dealing with this tonight. What exactly is happening? He motioned toward the elevators. Let's go upstairs. The elevator ride felt endless. Richard remained silent. Officer Daniels reviewed notes on a tablet. Nobody spoke. When the doors opened onto Emily's floor, she froze. Boxes, furniture, garbage bags, children's bicycles. Her hallway looked like moving day. Christmas wreaths she'd hung 2 weeks earlier had been removed. In their place. A handmade sign taped to her front door read, "Emily couldn't breathe." She slowly walked toward the door. Someone had changed the welcome mat. The flowers she'd planted beside the entrance were gone. It looked like she had never lived there. Officer Daniels knocked firmly. A few seconds later, Jason opened the door. He smiled. Then his face turned white. "Emily?" She stared at him. "What are you doing inside my home?" Behind him, Melissa appeared holding a roll of wrapping paper. Several relatives were arranging furniture. Children were running through the hallway laughing. Her grandmother's rocking chair had been shoved into a corner beneath stacked moving boxes. Emily felt something inside her snap. "Everybody stop." The room fell silent. Jason swallowed. "I thought..." "No." Her voice was calm. Too calm. "I want every single person out." Her father walked out of the kitchen. "You finally came." Emily looked directly at him. "Explain." Dad folded his arms. "We're helping Jason start over." "Inside my condo?" "You don't need this much space." Emily laughed, a short, empty laugh. "So you just..." She looked around. "Moved everyone in?" Dad spoke as though explaining something obvious. "We're family," Officer Daniels interrupted. "Sir." Dad ignored him. "You've always had more than enough." Emily stared at him. "I worked 12 years for this. And Jason has children." Emily shook her head. "So that's your argument?" "The kids need stability." "So you decided to steal my home?" The room became deathly quiet. Melissa suddenly burst into tears. "We already told the children this was their forever home." Emily turned toward her. "Then you should have waited until the owner agreed." Jason looked miserable. "I honestly believed you wanted this." Emily searched his face. For the first time that night, she realized something. He wasn't pretending. He truly believed their father. Officer Daniels stepped forward. "I need everyone who's not the legal owner to gather in the living room." Reluctantly. Everyone obeyed. Emily noticed dozens of personal items already missing. Family photos, kitchen appliances, several pieces of artwork. Then she noticed something else. Her safe. The closet door stood open. The small fireproof safe was gone. Her heart skipped. She rushed toward the bedroom. The shelf where it always sat was empty. "Richard," the manager hurried over. "My safe." He looked confused. There was one. It contained legal documents, my grandmother's jewelry, cash, my property deed. Officer Daniels immediately spoke into his radio. The atmosphere changed instantly. This was no longer simply a family dispute. Meanwhile, another officer carefully examined the stack of documents Jason had brought. 5 minutes later, he frowned. "Sir," he looked toward Emily. "These signatures don't match." Emily folded her arms. "Because they're fake." Dad's confidence finally began to crack. Officer Daniels looked directly at him. "Where did these documents come from?" Dad hesitated. Jason interrupted. "You told me Emily signed everything." Dad looked at his son. "I thought she would." Emily stared in disbelief. "You forged papers because you assumed I'd eventually agree?" Nobody answered. Melissa slowly sat down. The room suddenly felt much smaller. Then Richard quietly approached Emily. "There may be something else." "What?" He handed her an envelope. "It was dropped off yesterday." Emily looked at the handwriting. She recognized it instantly. Grandma Eleanor. Impossible. She had passed away nearly 2 years earlier. Her hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter, across the top, in case they ever try. Emily's eyes filled with tears. She slowly unfolded the pages. Her grandmother had written, "Emily, families aren't always broken by strangers. Sometimes they're broken by entitlement. If you're reading this, it means someone believes your kindness is weakness. Promise me one thing. Never surrender the life you built simply because someone shares your last name." Emily could barely continue. There was another sheet inside, a notarized document. Richard looked surprised. Officer Daniels leaned closer. "What is that?" Emily whispered. "It's from my grandmother's attorney." The attached note instructed Emily to contact the law firm immediately if anyone ever attempted to challenge ownership of her condo or claim family rights over it. Emily frowned. Why would Grandma prepare this? Then she remembered something from years ago. Grandma had once argued with Dad behind closed doors. Emily had only heard one sentence. "You will never touch what's hers." At the time, it hadn't made sense. Now, it did. Before anyone could speak again, Dad suddenly lunged toward the envelope. "Give me that." Officer Daniels immediately stepped between them. "Sir," Dad's face had turned bright red. "That letter changes nothing." Emily slowly looked up. "No." She carefully folded the letter. "It changes everything. Because for the first time." She realized this wasn't a spontaneous Christmas misunderstanding. Someone had been planning this for a very long time. And if her grandmother had prepared for this years before her death. There was a family secret that no one had told her. A secret buried long before Christmas dinner, and judging by the fear on her father's face. He knew exactly what it was. Emily barely slept that night. After the police escorted everyone except her, out of the condo, silence settled over the apartment like fresh snow. The overturned boxes were gone. The hallway was empty. But the peace she'd always felt inside these walls had vanished. She sat in her grandmother Eleanor's rocking chair until sunrise, the letter resting in her lap. One sentence refused to leave her mind. "You will never touch what's hers." What had Grandma known, and why had she believed this day would come? The truth begins to surface. At 9 the next morning, Emily arrived at the law office listed in the letter. The senior attorney, Margaret Holloway, greeted her with a sympathetic smile. "I was hoping I'd never meet you under these circumstances." Emily frowned. "You knew my grandmother?" "For nearly 30 years. Margaret unlocked a fireproof cabinet and removed a thick sealed file. Across the front, Eleanor had written. Emily's pulse quickened. Inside were handwritten notes, bank statements, property records, and copies of letters dating back almost 15 years. Margaret took a slow breath. "Your grandmother loved every member of your family." She paused. "But she trusted only one of them." Emily already knew the answer. "Me." Margaret nodded. "Your father had a history." "A history of what?" "Borrowing money from relatives, without repaying it." Emily stared. "He told us Grandpa left everything to Grandma because he was responsible." Margaret gave a sad smile. "That's not what happened." She slid another document across the desk. Years earlier, Emily's grandfather had quietly rewritten his will after discovering thousands of dollars missing from family savings. The withdrawals led directly to Emily's father. Instead of reporting him, Grandpa chose to protect the family from scandal. But he also made one important decision. He placed a large portion of the estate under Eleanor's complete control, with one condition, when the time came. Only Emily would inherit the financial assets meant for the next generation, not because she was the favorite, because she had never asked for a single thing. Emily turned another page. There it was. The truth she'd never imagined. Her condo hadn't simply been purchased through years of savings. Unknown to her, Eleanor had secretly contributed the final down payment through a trust established by Grandpa years earlier. Every payment Emily made afterward had been entirely her own. But Grandma had wanted to ensure her granddaughter could finally stop renting. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Why didn't she tell me? Margaret smiled gently. She believed knowing would make you feel you hadn't truly earned it. Emily covered her face. Grandma had protected her dignity, even while helping her. Just then, Margaret's assistant entered. The police are on the phone. Emily answered immediately. Officer Daniels sounded relieved. We found your safe. She stood. What? It was abandoned in a storage unit rented yesterday. And the contents? Everything appears untouched, including your grandmother's jewelry, the property deed, cash, even the original trust documents. Emily closed her eyes, for the first time in 2 days. She exhaled. A week later, Jason asked to meet, not at the family home, not at a restaurant, at the small neighborhood park where they used to play as children. He looked exhausted. I owe you an apology. Emily remained quiet. I believed Dad. I know. I never questioned him. Emily looked at the frozen pond nearby. Why? Jason's voice cracked. Because all my life, he convinced me someone else would always rescue us. Emily finally turned toward him. And did that ever make you happy? Jason slowly shook his head. No. For the first time, he accepted responsibility. Not because the police forced him, not because lawyers became involved, because he finally saw the truth. Dependence had stolen his confidence long before anyone tried to steal Emily's condo. Several months passed. Criminal charges related to forgery and attempted fraud moved through the courts. Some relatives apologized sincerely. Others never called again. Emily didn't chase anyone. She had spent enough of her life trying to earn love that should have been freely given. She renovated her condo. Not because she wanted to erase the memories, but because she wanted to create new ones. Grandma's rocking chair returned to its place beside the window. The flowers outside her door bloomed again in spring. The old welcome mat was replaced with a simple new one. Nothing more, nothing less. On what would have been Eleanor's 86th birthday, Margaret invited Emily back to the law office. There was one instruction your grandmother left. She handed Emily a small velvet box. Inside lay a delicate silver key. What does it open? Margaret smiled. A safety deposit box. Together they visited the bank. Inside were family photographs Emily had never seen, letters between her grandparents, recipes, holiday cards, and one final envelope, in Eleanor's handwriting. Emily opened it carefully. It read, My dearest Emily, a house is built with wood, stone, and glass. A home is built with respect. Never confuse people who need your kindness with people who deserve your trust. Forgive when your heart is ready. But never surrender your peace to satisfy someone else's entitlement. If one day you have children of your own, teach them this. Love is a gift. Ownership is a responsibility. Family is proven by actions, never by blood alone. I have always been proud of you. Merry Christmas. Love always. Grandma. Emily held the letter against her chest. For the first time since that disastrous Christmas dinner, she cried, not from betrayal, but from gratitude, because even after she was gone, Grandma had still found a way to protect her. The following Christmas, Emily didn't host a crowded family dinner. Instead, she invited a handful of people who had stood beside her through the hardest year of her life. Neighbors, friends, Richard, the building manager. Officer Daniels and his family stopped by for dessert after their shift. Jason came too. Not because everything had been magically repaired, but because rebuilding trust begins with honesty, not entitlement. As snow drifted outside, Emily looked around her living room. The laughter was quieter. The gathering was smaller, yet, somehow, the home had never felt warmer. She finally understood what her grandmother had spent years trying to teach her. A person who truly loves, you will never demand the sacrifice of your peace to prove your love, and those who see your kindness as permission to take from you are revealing exactly who they are. The most valuable thing you will ever own isn't your house, your money, or your possessions. It's the right to decide what happens to them. Protect your boundaries with the same care you protect your heart. Because real family doesn't take what's yours. Real family stands beside you while you build it.